Emily pressed her forehead to the passenger side window as the forest swallowed the last traces of the highway. Pines rose like dark pillars, their silhouettes sharpening under the fading sun. The world felt quieter here, almost too quiet, but she tried to see it the way she had imagined it for weeks. A secluded getaway, just her and Jace, far from deadlines, traffic, and the constant pulse of notifications. Mark reached over, giving her knee a warm, reassuring squeeze. "We're almost there. 10 more minutes, tops." His voice was soft, hopeful. He wanted this weekend to mean something too. They had booked the old lakeside cabin on a whim, guided by a single photo in the listing. A wooden porch, a view of still water, and a fire pit where someone long ago had carved an uneven heart into the stones. The description promised privacy, a scenic trail, and peace. That was enough. What the listing didn't mention was the town they had passed through, Ashford. A place so small it felt like a forgotten page of an old book. The grocery clerk's smile had faltered when Emily mentioned the lake. An older man near the exit, hearing their conversation, had muttered without looking up, "People don't stay out there after dark." He said it casually, almost lazily, but the words stuck to her like burrs. Mark had laughed it off. "Local superstition," he whispered once they were outside. "Every rural town has one." She tried to agree, but something about the way the man avoided eye contact unsettled her. The trees parted suddenly, revealing the narrow gravel road that led down toward the water. The lake glimmered dully, a perfect sheet of dark glass untouched by wind. At the end of the road stood the cabin, small, weather-worn, but charming in a lonely sort of way. Smoke didn't rise from the chimney. No other houses dotted the shore, just them, the trees, and the lake. When Mark cut the engine, the silence pressed in. Emily stepped out, breathing in the sharp, cool air. It carried the scent of wet bark and something faintly metallic. She wrapped her arms around herself as Mark unloaded their bags. On the porch hung a small brass bell, suspended from a thin chain beside the door. It swayed gently, though no breeze touched it. Emily paused beneath it, uneasy without knowing why. The cabin seemed to wait, quiet, patient, as if holding its breath. "Hey," Mark said, smiling as he unlocked the door. "Welcome to our little refuge." Emily tried to smile back, but as they stepped inside, she couldn't shake the strange feeling that the forest had watched them arrive, and the lake had listened. The cabin smelled of cedar and old pages, like someone once read books here every night and never opened a window. Emily set her bag down and walked slowly through the single-room space. The wood floors creaked softly beneath her steps, each sound echoing in the stillness as if the cabin hadn't heard new footsteps in years. A small kitchen sat to the left, a stone fireplace to the right, and a narrow door led to the bedroom. Everything felt untouched, suspended in time. On the table lay a thin layer of dust, disturbed only by the faint circles where someone once placed mugs. Mark wandered to the back window and whistled. "Look at this view." The lake stretched out like a sheet of dark metal, the surface unbroken even as the first stars blinked awake above it. Emily joined him, though a shiver crawled up her arms as she stared at that stillness. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, though something about it felt too perfect, too unmoving. They unpacked, lit a few lamps, and made a simple dinner. The warmth of the cabin helped ease the tension in Emily's shoulders, and for a moment, it felt like the weekend might actually unfold the way they had hoped. Calm, simple, just theirs. But as night settled fully over the lake, the atmosphere changed. The forest outside grew unnaturally dark, as if the trees had pulled all the shadows into themselves. The windows reflected only the lamplight. Beyond that, there was nothing but black. Around 10, Emily stepped onto the porch for air. The brass bell beside the door hung motionless, catching the light in its curved surface. She reached out and brushed it lightly with her fingertips. It didn't move. Yet when she turned toward the lake, a soft metallic tremor rang through the quiet behind her. She spun around. The bell vibrated gently, the chain quivering though the night air was absolutely still. Jace, she called, her voice thin. He appeared in the doorway, brows lifted. What's wrong? The bell just, she gestured helplessly. The bell was still again, innocently still. Mark exhaled a half laugh. Old metal, temperature change. It happens. Emily nodded, but the explanation sat uneasily in her stomach. Inside, they played cards for a while, trying to shake the moment off. Yet Emily found herself glancing at the windows, where the reflections of the lamps floated like trapped stars. Near midnight, as they prepared for bed, a faint sound drifted through the cabin, soft, almost questioning. A single chime of the porch bell. Emily froze. Mark paused mid-step. The bell chimed again, one delicate, trembling note, as though someone were gently, thoughtfully testing it. And outside, the lake remained perfectly still. The fire had burned down to a soft orange glow, throwing long, crooked shadows against the trees. Mark sat hunched beside it, rubbing his hands together as if the cold were sinking straight into his bones. Emily watched him from the porch, her face tight with concern. "Mark, you're freezing. Come inside." He didn't answer right away. He just stared into the flames, jaw clenched, eyes unfocused. When he finally stood and stepped toward her, she noticed something strange about the way he moved. Careful, almost cautious, like he wasn't fully sure of his own body. Inside the cabin, the air felt warmer, but Mark's skin was still unnervingly cold. Emily wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, but he flinched as though even the soft fabric hurt. "I'm fine," he whispered. I think I heard something out there." Emily sat beside him. "The figure again," he nodded. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "It was closer this time." A knock suddenly echoed from the porch, gentle, almost polite. They both froze. Emily's voice came out thin. "Mark, no one knows we're here." The knock came again, 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. Mark stood automatically, as though pulled by an invisible thread. Emily grabbed his wrist. "Don't you dare open that door." He hesitated, blinking rapidly, confusion flickering across his face. I don't think it wants to hurt us." Emily's stomach tightened. His voice didn't sound like his own. It was too calm, too certain. Another knock. But this time, something scraped beneath it, like fingertips dragging lazily across the wood. Emily pulled Mark back, trying to shake him out of whatever fog he was trapped in. "Listen to me. Something is wrong with you. With this place, we need to leave at sunrise." Mark's breath grew shallow. "I don't remember walking back to the cabin earlier," he whispered. "I just appeared here, and there was this feeling like someone was standing right behind me." Emily swallowed hard, fighting the urge to look over her shoulder. The knock came a third time, louder, not patient anymore. Emily mustered her courage and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, directly beside her ear, in a voice that wasn't Mark's, wasn't human, wasn't anything, a whisper slithered through the room. "You left something outside." Emily spun around, heart hammering, but there was no one behind her. Mark staggered, gripping his head, his face pale. "Emily, I think it wants me." The fire in the hearth flickered violently, as if blown by a sudden invisible wind. The shadows on the walls tightened into sharp, unnatural angles. Outside, a slow, dragging footstep moved across the porch. Then another. Then it stopped right in front of the door. Emily grabbed Mark's hand and whispered, "We are not opening that door, no matter what." But as the room fell into suffocating silence, she noticed something new, something that made her blood run cold. Mark was smiling. A small, distant, wrong smile. And it wasn't meant for her. Emily barely slept. Every time she drifted off, she jolted awake to the sound of Mark shifting beside her, too still, then too restless, then whispering incoherent fragments under his breath. When the faint gray of dawn finally crept through the windows, she felt a fragile sense of relief. Morning light meant safety, or at least distance from the thing that wanted them. Mark sat at the table, staring at nothing. His eyes were unfocused, ringed with shadows. Emily placed a mug of warm tea in front of him. He didn't touch it. "Mark," she whispered, "we're packing up and leaving. Today." He blinked slowly, like he was waking from a dream he didn't want to leave. "I heard it again last night," he murmured. "It was inside the cabin, Emily. It stood right at the foot of the bed." She froze. "Did you see it?" His head tilted slightly. "No, but I felt it leaning over me, breathing." He paused. "It said my name." Emily's blood turned cold. "Then we're leaving even faster." They packed in silence. Emily kept glancing at him. His movements were too smooth now, his reactions delayed, like he was half here, half elsewhere. As they walked toward the car, the forest felt wrong. Too still, too expectant. Their footsteps seemed swallowed by the earth. Mark suddenly stopped, head turning toward the lake in a slow mechanical motion. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Emily listened, only the faint rustle of leaves. "No," she said firmly. "Come on." But Mark was already stepping toward the water. "Mark!" She grabbed his arm, panic rising. "We're leaving now." He didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the lake's smooth, glassy surface. "It's calling me," he said softly. "It wants to show me something." Emily tightened her grip. "You're not going anywhere near that water." His eyes flicked toward her then, just a fraction, and she saw a flash of something unfamiliar in them. Something cold, something borrowed. "Emily!" His voice sounded distant. "I think I left something down there." Her breath caught in her throat. Those were the exact words the whisper in the cabin had used. A sudden breeze rippled across the lake, pushing a dark, twisting shape just beneath the surface. Emily recoiled. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't anything she recognized. It moved like a shadow learning how to swim. She pulled him harder. "We're leaving right now." Mark finally turned toward her, but then his eyes widened, focusing on something behind her. Emily froze. "Emily," he whispered, voice trembling. "Behind you." Her heart hammered. She didn't want to look. But slowly, she turned her head. The trees at the edge of the clearing had shifted. Something tall stood between them, its silhouette almost blending into the trunks, elongated and impossibly thin. Its head tilted to one side, watching them with the patience of something ancient. Emily's body locked with fear. The figure stepped forward, just one step. The ground seemed to hum beneath her feet. Emily yanked Mark with all her strength and ran toward the car. The forest erupted behind them, snap, crack, shuffle, like branches bending to let something move faster through them. They reached the car. Emily shoved Mark inside and slammed the door. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the keys. The engine finally roared to life. As she hit the gas, she dared one last glance at the tree line. The figure stood at the edge of the clearing, motionless. But Mark was staring back at it through the window, his lips forming a silent, eerie smile. A smile she knew wasn't his at all. Emily drove like the world was collapsing behind them. Trees blurred past, the narrow forest road twisting as though it didn't want to let them leave. Branches scraped the car's sides, sharp and deliberate, like fingers dragging along metal. Mark sat unnervingly still in the passenger seat, eyes fixed straight ahead, hands resting calmly in his lap. Too calmly. Emily's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We're almost out," she whispered more to herself than to him. "Just a few more miles." Mark didn't respond. A subtle, rhythmic tapping echoed beside her. She forced herself to glance over, and her stomach clenched. Mark was tapping one finger slowly against the window. Tappy, tappy, tappy 3 times. Always 3. "Mark," she said gently, "can you look at me?" He didn't. His gaze was locked on the tree line flashing by as if he were watching for something or waiting for it. "Mark!" His head turned with that same unsettling slowness from the night before. But his eyes were smiling before his mouth did. "You're driving the wrong way," he murmured. A chill slashed through her. "What are you talking about? There's only one road." He leaned slightly closer, voice low. "It wants us to stay." Emily faced forward and her breath caught. The road, which should have led straight to the highway, curved left in a way she didn't recognize. The trees were thicker, older, leaning over the asphalt as though eavesdropping. "You see," Mark whispered. It's guiding us back. No, Emily said, forcing conviction she didn't feel. This is just panic. We'll find the exit. But as she followed the curve, sunlight dimmed. The forest squeezed tighter around them. The temperature dropped. And then the lake appeared on the right side of the road. Impossible. Emily slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, dust swirling around them. Mark smiled wider. We're home. Emily's breathing turned shallow. No, this isn't happening. But the lake was there, perfectly still, its surface smooth as a mirror. Their cabin stood across the clearing, dark and silent, as though they had never left. Emily shook her head violently. We were driving away. We were going the right direction. You were, Mark said softly. I wasn't. He reached for the door handle. Emily grabbed his arm. Don't you get out. Emily. His tone was almost tender. It's calling me. You can hear it now too, can't you? Before she could respond, a faint ripple spread across the lake, one long, silent pulse. The surface bulged, as if something beneath it took a deep breath. Emily's vision swam with fear. We are not going back to that cabin. But Mark was stronger than she expected. He pulled away, pushed the door open, and stepped out onto the dirt. The wind died. The forest held its breath. Mark! Emily ran after him, grabbing his shirt. Please, whatever you think is calling you, it's not real. He turned. For a moment, she saw her Mark again, terrified, lost, fighting something inside him. Emily, his voice cracked. I don't want to go. Please don't let me. His body jerked violently, like invisible hands had snapped something back into place. His expression smoothed into empty calm, and then he walked toward the lake. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Mark, stop! But he didn't. He stepped to the very edge of the water. The lake's surface began to swirl, dark shapes twisting just beneath, circling like hungry shadows. Emily took a desperate step forward, and something enormous moved under the water, rising as though answering him. Emily froze at the water's edge, her breath coming in sharp, panicked bursts. The lake churned with slow, deliberate movement beneath the surface, circling, rising, as though preparing to break through the skin of the water and take shape. Mark stood still, toes nearly touching the rippling edge. His expression was blank, emptied out, like everything inside him had been hollowed to make room for something else. Mark, Emily whispered, voice trembling, come back to me. Please. He didn't turn. His body swayed slightly, as if lulled by a sound she couldn't hear. A low vibration thrummed through the ground, humming up her legs, making her teeth ache. Then Mark spoke, but quietly, mechanically. It says I belong here. Emily stepped closer, pushing past the terror tightening her chest. No, you belong with me. Look at me, Mark. Look. Slowly, too slowly, he tilted his head toward her. For a moment, she saw fear flicker in his eyes, real fear, his fear. Emily, I'm trying, but it's inside my head. The lake surged violently. A column of water rose in a spiraling twist, like a hand reaching upward. Emily staggered back. A whisper, cold and close, slid through her mind. He called us first. Emily clamped her hands over her ears, but the voice wasn't coming from outside. Mark stepped forward, toward the rising water. No, Emily grabbed him around the waist, pulling with everything she had. You're not going into that lake. His body fought hers, not wildly, but with steady, unnatural strength. Emily let go. It's easier this way. Easier for what? She cried. Before he could answer, the water shot upward with a sharp crack, forming a tall, twisting silhouette. Not human, not even close. Limbs too long, torso too narrow, head shaped like a bent crescent. Its surface rippled like living liquid, but inside were shadows moving with intention. Emily choked on her scream. The creature leaned toward Mark. He gasped suddenly, as though the air was sucked from his lungs. Emily, run! No, she said, gripping him tighter. I'm not leaving you. The creature's head lowered to them, its faceless surface pulsing as if studying. A thin tendril of water extended, brushing Mark's shoulder. He convulsed, knees buckling. Emily lunged, shoving him backward. Don't touch HIM, the tendril recoiled, but only to curl toward her instead. Cold rushed across her skin before she even felt it. Images shattered through her mind, dark water, a cabin collapsing into the lake, distorted faces beneath the surface, reaching upward. Emily screamed and stumbled away, breaking the contact. The creature retreated a few feet, its shape flickering like a glitch in reality. The lake calmed around it, ripples tightening into a perfect circle. Mark collapsed to his knees, coughing. Emily hurried to him, grabbing his face between her hands. "Stay with me, please, stay." He blinked rapidly, eyes clearing for a second. "Emily, I saw what it wants." "What?" He swallowed hard. "It's not done with us." Behind them, the creature began sinking back into the water, slowly, intentionally, like it knew the next move belonged to them. And the lake held its breath. Emily pulled Mark to his feet, trembling. His knees wobbled and his hands shook, but for the first time in hours, he seemed fully himself, fragile, terrified, but alive. She gripped his arm, her own fear threatening to collapse her entirely. "We have to leave," she said, voice raw. "Now, get in the car and we drive until we're somewhere anywhere else." He nodded slowly. Together, they stumbled back toward the gravel road. The forest loomed silently around them, the shadows stretching unnaturally long, as though reluctant to let them leave. The lake glimmered in the distance, calm again, but Emily couldn't shake the memory of its shape, the way it had seemed to breathe. They reached the car. Emily threw open the door, yanked Mark inside, and slammed it shut. The engine roared to life, loud enough to echo into the trees. For a moment, the road seemed normal, safe. Then the world tilted. The path ahead twisted impossibly. Trees bent inward, blocking the view. Sunlight vanished behind thick clouds, leaving a dim gray that pressed down on their shoulders. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the familiar road they had taken earlier looped back into the forest, circling impossibly toward the lake. Mark's hands clenched the dashboard. "It's guiding us," he whispered. "It wants something, I can feel it." Emily swallowed hard, gripping the wheel. "We are not going back, not to that lake, not to that cabin. We're leaving any way we can." A soft vibration hummed beneath the tires, subtle but insistent. And then the sound came. Faint, liquid, almost like breathing. The lake was behind them now, yet the sound was inside the car, pressing into their ears, whispering their names with voices too familiar, too warm, too wrong. Emily glanced at Mark. His face had gone blank again, that eerie calm settling over him like a mask. "Emily," he said softly, "it's patient, it waits. We can't outrun it." The road stretched before them, yet it was the same stretch they had driven countless times. The forest pressed in closer, bending the light, warping the asphalt. Emily's vision blurred with panic. Every turn, every mile felt like stepping deeper into the same trap. Then she saw it. Reflected in the rearview mirror, just for a second, dark ripples moving across the road behind them, shadows too tall, too thin, circling the car in impossible patterns. Something was moving with them. Watching. Waiting. Emily's hands shook as she pushed the gas pedal. The car surged forward. Tires squealed. Trees whipped past. The vibration grew, low and insistent, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Mark leaned toward her, whispering, "It doesn't have to end like this, but it will." And then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. The engine cut out. The forest vanished. Only the lake remained ahead, calm and dark, reflecting the sky like polished black glass. Emily's scream tore through the air. Mark's hand reached for hers, but it wasn't his. The water shimmered. The surface rippled once, twice, and a single, elongated shadow rose, tall, faceless, waiting. Emily blinked. When she opened her eyes again, they were both gone. The car sat empty at the edge of Ashford Lake, engine cold, doors slightly ajar. The forest whispered nothing. The lake waited. Weeks passed. No search teams reported anything unusual. No neighbors noticed the missing couple. Ashford Lake appeared peaceful, undisturbed, reflecting the sky in perfect, dark stillness. Locals whispered that the lake sometimes claimed visitors. They never said why. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. Everyone feared. The cabin remained empty, weathered, and quiet. The brass bell hung on the porch, swinging slightly as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. The water lapped gently against the shore, but beneath its surface, faint ripples moved in impossible patterns, circling endlessly. People passing by claimed they sometimes heard soft laughter, two voices, coming from the lake, echoing just beyond comprehension. Familiar voices, pleading voices, voices that begged someone to step closer. But no one ever did. On a calm evening, the sun sank behind the trees and the lake darkened to black. For a heartbeat, the surface shimmered as if it were breathing. And in that moment, it seemed aware of everything: the forest, the cabin, the empty road. The lake waited, always, patiently, for the next footsteps that might wander too close, the next heart that might listen to the wrong voice. And somewhere deep beneath the still water, shadows shifted, watching, learning, and remembering. Ashford Lake didn't forgive. It didn't forget. It only waited. And the waiting never ends.